Greetings, welcome to the challenge. Hopefully, you guys are finding this information and this challenge very helpful to you, and I'm excited for you to be here. What I did was each week I've actually already went through and actually filmed the weekly, let's say, recap of the week. And so what I did was I would have tagged you on this particular week. By the way, today marks week number 3, so congratulate yourself on completing 2 weeks of the challenge. So today is actually starting week 3, and week 3 is going to be about refresh. And again, for the week 2 video, I've already posted that information. And so what I like to do is every single week, I want to be able to be accessible to you. So I make myself available during this time. It's typically it's on the Monday, but yesterday was a holiday and I was traveling, so it definitely wasn't conducive for me to go live. But I do like to make myself available so that if you do have any pending questions and answers, that way we can address them live. I know I do like I said, I film the weekly recaps, if you will, but sometimes something may come up, in particular if you're new to the challenge, again, because those would have been filmed some time ago. But I like to make myself available for you if you do have any questions that's come up during the week. So, by the way, I should be able to see your comments I have like 2 broadcasts going on right now. So I'm looking at the StreamYard, and the comments will come up here, but I also have my Facebook right over here, so I can actually see who's posting, or if anyone's posting. All right, but if there's no questions, again, I always like to give you an opportunity. And by the way, for those of you that are actually brave, you can actually come on live with me. Like you can actually, like I can send you a link and you can actually ask your question live. So if you ever want to do that, then feel free to let me know, and I can invite you on as a guest, and you can actually ask me your question in person. And sometimes that actually makes it, I think it'll be a little bit more beneficial to you, because that way we get the feedback back and forth, as opposed to me just answering questions based upon what you messaged me earlier. Okay, so no questions. I don't see on either of them. All right. And hold on, give me a second. I see that my broadcast, give me a second here. Okay, there we go. I was getting like a little light going on here from the window. Okay, well, if there's no pending questions, again, if anything comes up, then I'm available. There are 4 things that I wanted to address in this particular broadcast. And the first one is about forgiving. So I don't know if you guys saw it or not, but there was I won't mention names just because. Hi, Sarah Ann, good to see you. All right, nice to see you. I'm back from my vacation, as you can see. All right, so the first thing I wanted to talk about was forgiveness. And this was a matter of fact, I can say names because this is a private group, so it's not like I'm gonna be posting this particular part anyway. So David mentioned something on the broadcast about forgiving. He was saying that he was having challenges in forgiveness area. And so I wrote back to him information about forgiveness, and I said I was going to address it on this week's live. So I want to address that because forgiveness is something that's very, very huge. And I know we know how important it is. And I know a lot of us strive to forgive, but if we don't actually, like for instance, sometimes we think that we've forgiven and then things come up and then we find that we haven't forgiven, or sometimes like we just need a little bit more around that whole realm of forgiveness, because there's something deep in that word. Let's see. All right. So, okay, so good. Sarah does have a question. So before I go on forgiveness, let's see what her question is. She said, question for the collective, how to stabilize during trying times and stay in forgiveness. Okay, perfect. So that goes into what we're talking about. Okay, good question. Because when it comes to forgiveness, this is something I like to say, words are not just words, they're concepts. Like to me, words, they have like deeper meaning. Like there's a depth to the words. And forgiveness, this is one deep well. Okay. And so I'll address it to the level of extent that I feel that's needed. And obviously, if you want to go in more, if you have any more specific questions regarding it, then, obviously come on, like I'll definitely address your question for the collective as well, Sarah Ann. But we know the importance of forgiveness, right? There's no need of me reiterating what that is. But I want you to understand that when it comes to forgiveness, because depending on what it is that you're forgiving, you're trying to forgive, right? Like, for instance, there may be something like a childhood trauma. It could be abuse. It could be, anything. There can be anything. So really depending on the depth of what happened with the event is going to determine how willingness you are to forgive. And obviously, the more that you're deeply hurt, it's going to be harder to forgive because one, you're like, well, why am I forgiving this person that did this horrendous thing to me or this situation or circumstance? And you're like, well, why? Well, the main reason for forgiveness is not for the other person. Understand that the forgiveness is for you. And I mentioned this in my post, and I said, when you're holding on to a grudge, no matter what the grudge is, okay, this is literally no matter what the grudge is, if you're holding on to it, that's like you trying to pick up a hot coal with the intent on throwing it towards someone else. But what happens when you pick up that hot coal, you get burned. So in other words, that grudge that you're holding on is deeply enrooted and affecting you, not the other person. I guarantee you the other person is not even thinking about it the same as you are, if they're even thinking about it at all. Like they're going to have a totally different perspective of what happened. And in their mind, they may or may not be right. And I know you understand that. So you're saying, so why should I forgive them if they're not even sorry for what they did? But remember, forgiveness is not about the person. The forgiveness is about yourself. Okay, you're forgiving yourself because if you're holding on to that, understand that's becoming deeply enrooted within you. And I'm telling you, it can cause havoc on your life. And this is the thing when you're holding on to those type of emotions relating to those events is this. It's not going to, like, for instance, I mentioned to David that, like, for instance, let's use anger as one, because a lot of times there's a lot of anger, emotion associated with anger. And with that anger, it's going to be deeply enrooted into places where you're not going to even think about it. Like, in other words, it's going to show up on your body. The emotion is going to affect your body. And it's not just one emotion, it's going to be multiple emotions. So you may identify anger, but there may be other emotions that's also related to that event that you hadn't identified. And then therefore, when you're trying to say, okay, I forgive, and you're really, in earnest trying to forgive, it's hard, or you realize that next thing you know, you're being triggered. And it's because there's emotions involved around that event. So it's going to require you to actually be patient with yourself and get to the root of the problem. And that, my friends, is a challenge. Okay, it really is a challenge, and it's a process. And it's not something that you can just do one time and then it is done. I mean, this is literally something. It's a process, and it goes over and over again because our lives is like an onion, if you will. And there's just layers among layers of it. And not only that, you don't even know where it is. Like I mentioned, like anger typically shows up in your liver or your gallbladder. But again, if there's something else associated with that event, some other type of emotion, it's going to show up in somewhere else. And if you don't take the time to address all of it, all the emotions involved, that circumstances, then what your question is, how to stabilize during those trying times, is going to be challenging because you haven't addressed it. Okay. But of course, I will definitely give you some tools that can help you. But first, I want to talk about how to, the importance of forgiveness is not because you're trying to get the other person off. It's literally because it's going to help you. Okay. It's literally going to help you. I want you to understand that also too, that resistance to forgiveness is actually fueled by your emotions. So if you're having any type of resistance towards forgiveness, there's emotions involved in it. And that's what needs to be addressed, is the emotions involved in the trauma. And I'm going to say trauma because that's what it felt like to you. And it may have been, remember, this is your perspective. And, I'm not trying to downplay it, no matter what it is. I mean, it can be something, it doesn't have to necessarily be abuse or mistreatment. It could be whatever. It's just traumatic to you. And this reminds me, this happened actually this weekend. I went to a graduation. My niece graduated, and during the graduation, what my brother did was he decided to, have everyone say words of reflection regarding his daughter, his oldest daughter, which is my niece. And so he went up first, and he talked about, a lot of stuff. And what he said was this. He said that when he was 15 years old, he was the only one of his friends that had a car. And everyone, and mind you, my brother, just give you a little background story, there's 4 sisters and a brother. So he's spoiled. Okay, so he grew up being spoiled. He's right in the middle. So he has 2 older sisters and 2 younger. I'm the second youngest sister. Okay, so he grew up being spoiled. So he was telling the story of how when he was 15 years old, he was the only one of his friends that had a car. And they were talking about how spoiled he was. He said, but what they didn't realize was that he was probably the only one that at the age of 7 was required to get up to go mow lawns with my dad. Now, when he was telling the story, it was to him, that was the traumatic event at 7 years old, having to get up and mow lawns with my dad and help my dad in his landscaping business. That was traumatic to him. Like, it literally affected him because he didn't feel that he, like at 7 years old, who wants to go work, so he felt traumatized. Now, obviously, now he's older and you can rationalize and look back. But what I'm sharing with you is the event at the time is still going to affect you years later, even though you may be able to rationalize. Again, that's not, for him. I mean, I don't know if he really considered that abuse or whatever, but I'm pretty sure at the time it felt like it was abuse. What I'm sharing with you is it doesn't matter how you categorize the circumstances. It's your category, because it's important to you, because you're the one that felt the emotion at the time and is deeply rooted in you. And understand, my brother now, he's 50 years old. Okay. That happened when he was 7. It still affects him to this day. And that's what happens when you hold on to emotions evolved to relate to event. Now, he's not angry at my dad or anything like that, but I'm just sharing with you an example of how things that happen in a childhood can affect you to this day unless you go back and address it. So with the example of forgiveness, if you don't have the act of forgiveness, it's going to completely wreak havoc on your life. It literally is, because every time something centered around that emotion, you're triggered. And it doesn't be that like, for instance, you don't have to be abused again, but anything related to that particular event or circumstance can trigger you. And then it's going to bring up those emotions all over again. You're going to relive it all over again, including your body. And that, my friends, is the basis of a lot of disease that's out there. Disease is because of deeply enrooted trauma based upon emotions that we felt at the time that the event happened. So it's very, very important that, don't take light over that stance of forgiveness, to really and completely go through the process of relieving those emotions. It's not about saying the words, I forgive, or have the intent, I forgive, and that's it. Those emotions have to be expressed. And if you don't express those emotions, they will become suppressed. And then obviously, again, it's going to wreak havoc on your lives, which, we all know, because we're all a victim of the circumstances. Okay, so it's important that you do that. And what I didn't do is I didn't give a tool of how to do that, which I'm going to do now. But you're going to find that my tools are not the same, because I have a boatload of tools, but the tools I'm introducing to you are tools that's going to help you to affect change within yourself. Okay, so in other words, I don't want to say this, let me just give an example. Let's talk about tapping. Okay, so if you never heard of tapping, there's different meridian points that you can actually tap to help release emotions, right? And tapping is very, very effective for some emotions. Tapping may or may, and I'm not going to say it affects all of them. It depends on what the emotion is, and if you actually believe in it. If you believe in it, it does work. Now, I've had success on it, and I've had people that have not had success and say it didn't work for them. So that's why what I share with you is, I don't share with you, you should do this or you should do that, you should do this. What I do share with you is go within and ask yourself what you should do, because I guarantee you, your higher self, your connection to divine source is not going to lead you astray. I can make recommendations based upon my experience with my clients, my experience with the collective, as being as a healer. I've had a lot of experiences, not just myself, but with clients, and also interacting with other healers. So I can share those with you, right? But what happens if I share a tool with you and it doesn't work for you? And then not only that, I'm sharing a tool with you. So in essence, I'm actually doing two things that can potentially damage you. One, I'm sharing a tool with you that works for the most part, but it didn't work for you. So now you're thinking something's wrong with me because it didn't work for me, particularly if the person that shared the tool with you saying it's effective. I'm telling you that tapping is effective, but yet when you're doing it, it's not effective for you, then you're like, what's wrong with me? It's not working for me. So that's number one, the damage I'm doing. Another damage that I will be doing is I'm betraying your trust within yourself, because now you're going outside of yourself to ask someone else, namely me, what you should do. When I'm sharing with you, ask yourself. Now, yourself, you may be saying, well, my higher self is saying ask you. Well, that's totally different. Then that will be a one-on-one conversation. But what I'm sharing with you is, first, get still and talk to yourself. I guarantee you, you will answer, your higher self will answer you 100% of the time. And I understand that, particularly as this is new to you, to this type of way of being, if you will, it's going to require patience. Again, we talked about this before in other broadcasts about how do you build trust with people. It requires communication. It requires showing up. It requires having a dialogue and a conversation. Well, that's what I'm sharing with you. How do you build trust with yourself? It's the same process. You have to completely have the communication, the dialogue, and the patience with yourself. And once you have that, I guarantee you there's not a question that you will ever have to ask anyone ever again. You can ask other people just because, but there literally would not be a question you would have to ask outside of yourself, because once you build that trust, which we know goes to a knowing, remember the trust is still the basis of building. But then once you build the trust and you go to a 100% knowing or 100% certainty, when you reach that level, there's not anything that you ever have to ask anyone again. If I ask someone something, I'm telling you this honestly, it's one of two reasons. Okay. One, I just want to know, for, like, let's say, it's not necessary to ask, to see if I'm right, because I would have asked myself first. I guarantee you that. It just may be just to see another perspective, because again, I recognize that a lot of times within myself, whatever it is I'm asking about, my eyes might be tainted or cloudy or whatever. So I want a different perspective. That would be a reason why I would ask for something from someone else. Or I'm being impatient with myself. And that's probably more likely than that. In other words, my higher self, like a lot of times for me, I'll ask a question and the answer doesn't come immediately, because it's something that requires a bigger, I like to use the word lessons. I say opportunity for growth. And because of that, sometimes I get impatient. So I say, okay, let me just go look this up. Let me ask that. And when that happens, though, I do know I'm being led and guided in my asking. Okay, so those will be the only reasons why. But I don't ask because I don't know the answer, because I know the answer is within. So that's always first. And I guarantee you now, and again, this has been a process. I didn't just land here. It's a process, and it's still a process, because there's things that I still get impatient about. And I'll talk about that later on when we get to one of the other things I want to talk about. Okay, but forgiveness is very, very important. So how do you stabilize yourself during trying times? You literally be patient with yourself. It requires you to be patient. Patience is, I don't even want to say patience is a virtue. That's an old adage, right? It's old common saying, but it is actually really true. Be patient with yourself in the process. Trust the process. Trust that whatever you need is within yourself and that you have it. And then be patient with the process. It's not going to come how you want. It's just not going to do that. And I get it. I remember I'm on this journey as well. I'm on this journey with you. There are certain things I ask about and I'm like waiting for the answer. And the answer comes a totally different way, like out in left field. I'll give you an example. Okay, since we're being honest here. I'm going to give you an example. And Mimi, you and I talked about this. I mentioned to you, I read somewhere. I can't remember where I read or heard somewhere where the person was using an analogy of a runner. And I'm a runner, so this really struck with me. She said that no matter, like, let's say you're going to go out on a 45-minute run and you're going to leave from your house. And every time you go running, you leave from your house, you're going to go for a 45-minute run. Okay. Some days you may run further than others because, again, 45 minutes, which, by the way, I run now for time. I don't run for distance. And that's a side note. But it's important because, again, it requires this, it kind of all feeds in. I don't say I'm going to go out and run 3 miles. Why don't I do that? Well, because I will kill myself trying to run those 3 miles, even though 3 miles may not be in me. Otherwise, I'll beat myself up from not doing it. But if I say I'm going to go run for 45 minutes, within that 45 minutes, I may run 3 miles, 5 miles, 6 miles, whatever. I just go for time. And so what this person was saying is that no matter the, like, for instance, if you say you're going to go out for 45 minutes, you may go anywhere between however distance, but there's still going to be only a maximum amount of distance you're going to cover within that time frame. Why? Because you have the same starting point. Like if I go out for 45 minutes, I may run 4 miles, I may run 5 miles, I may run 6 miles, I may run 3 miles. I'm not going to run 10 miles because I'm only giving myself 45 minutes. Now, obviously, I'm saying the point of the story is because you're always starting from the same point, the same vantage point. In order to really grow, you need to start from a different starting point or a different vantage point. So drive 10 minutes or drive 15 minutes and then run 45 minutes. You're going to cover the same distance, but now you're going to have a different area, a different perspective, right? So this is where the learning came from me, because again, I love that analogy. I love analogies. So I'm going to use that one because it's great. But this just happened to me because I got a different vantage point, perspective, if you will. So I was noticing in my life that anytime that God has taken something away from me, I don't get it back. Okay, I don't get it back. And I would say that, like, that would be my lament to God. Like, okay, I remember, okay, and this was mainly about relationships, but it's about houses, about cars, about different things, like different perspective. As I was going through my life, I just kind of like noticed the trend that if it was taken away from me, it wasn't given back to me. And recently, I just bought my dream car last year, January of last year. And there was some type of I won't go into the detail, but basically it was a type where I bought the car and then they were like, oh, we need you to bring the car back. But we ended up working it out. But I was able to keep the car in my possession. I never had to give it up, and it ended up working to my advantage. It worked out well. So in that respect, I was like, okay, but that's an exception because I never gave up the car. But if I look at this relationship, blah, 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 like anytime anything was taken away from me, it was never given back. And that had always been my lament. Now, keep in mind that I understood that anytime something was taken away from me, it was to my advantage. In other words, you know, what's the saying, God's rejection is your protection? I totally believe that. So that wasn't the point. But what I was saying was there was a particular circumstance where I was like, that was taken away from me. So why am I still focusing on it? It's not going to give back because you never give anything else back for me. And keep in mind, I'm sharing with you about the law of attraction, and the law of attraction is what you're focusing on. And that's what I was focusing on. So then after I read this analogy about it and I was meditating on it, and again, this didn't happen like overnight. Like when I heard the analogy, I don't remember when it was we were talking about Mimi, but it was very recently, like within the last 2 weeks, we talked about it. And then I've been, meditating on it, but not like focused meditation, just like, oh, I just really love that analogy. Why did that come in my reality? What can I learn from that? That's what I was asking. I just got the learning. What's today? Today is Tuesday. So I just got the learning on Friday. It was on my drive to the airport to go to my trip this weekend, and I got it. It was a different perspective, and the perspective was this: Pia, it's not that God took something away from you and then didn't give it back. It always came back. You chose not to receive it back. And I was like, that was like an aha moment. Like I literally had like tears in my eyes because I was like, oh my God, you're absolutely right. I looked at every single relationship that I was talking about. Like, you took this person away from me, this person away from me. Every last one of those guys came back, but I had changed and I didn't want them back. I literally didn't want them back, but I never thought of it that way. I didn't look at it that way. I looked at it from the perspective of you took things away from me and then I never got them back, as opposed to, no, things were taken away from you for a reason. And then when they were brought back, because you changed, you chose not to have them back. It's always been your choice. And I was like, wow. Like that was a real aha moment. It's like that different perspective. So while we're talking about how to stabilize yourself during trying times, think of a different perspective. What is the perspective that you're not seeing? What is the point of view? What's the point of view that you're looking at it from? What is the angle? Then change the angle, because I guarantee you when you change the angle, you're going to actually see it from a different perspective. That's how you stabilize yourself, is that you're constantly always in the wonderment. Like I mentioned this before, never ask how and never ask why. Why is this happening to me and how is this going to work? Those are the two questions you don't ask divine source. You don't ask God those questions, okay? Those are not the ones. But what you can do is be in the wonderment, like, oh, I wonder why, not wonder why, or wonder if, or wonder this, like be in the state of wonderment. And as long as you're in that state of wonderment, then whatever it is, depending on your trying times are, whatever they are, a different perspective will come to light. But you have to be open to it. If you're not open to it, if you're still seeing it from the standpoint as woe is me, why this happened to me, or this happened to me, and this is my story. Remember, it's the story that you're telling yourself, and you keep telling yourself the same story over and over again. And that's why you're reliving it over and over again. It's the law of attraction. It works on all the time on every single thing. It's what you're focusing on. So in those trying times, and obviously if I had an example of a trying time, I can make more, I can solidify a little better, but I'm just thinking in terms of, as I'm going through like trying times, what helps me to stay balanced. It's because I don't get myself on that seesaw of duality. Remember we talked about that, the seesaw of duality? Don't categorize something as bad or good. Just categorize as this is what happened and just be equanimous about it. That's how you stay balanced. Because if you're not equanimous or neutral about it, now you're judging it. And it's that judgment that's keeping you off balance. There's no way you're going to be unbalanced judging a situation. But if you look at it again, that's why I was able to see it. Because at first I wasn't, even though, and this is the thing, remember when I shared with you how words have depth? Judgment is one of those words that has a depth. Like we're saying, oh, I'm not judging you. Oh, we judge people all the time. Because a lot of times that we don't think as judgmental is judging. I was judging that circumstance, those situations where I was saying God was taking things away from me. That was a judgmental perspective. And I was shown how that was judgmental, but only because I was able to get neutral. Once I became neutral, and the neutrality was, I know it's for my protection. So I'm not saying that I'm upset that you took it, but for this particular circumstances, I was trying, now like we use the word trying, but in this particular relationship, I wanted to know, should I move on to something else? Because looking at the past, and I was shown how don't judge the past, don't use the present situation and judge it with the past circumstances, because it's not. One thing about it, different people, different circumstances, and more importantly, you're different. And that's what I was like, okay, I got it. So where am I at right now? How do I feel about this circumstances? Equanimous. And because I was equanimous, I was able to show that, remember how before in the past you were looking at it this way? Well, now that you're equanimous, let me show you another perspective, one I would have never considered. So when it comes to those trying times, it's important that you don't, let's just put it this way, it's important that you stay neutral. Just get to neutral. Neutral means you're not judging it one way or the other, it's just what is. And if you can get to neutral, that's how you're going to stay balanced. Because once you're neutral, it's going to open yourself up, because I know that you will then open yourself up to different perspective, and then that will help you with the situation. And that will also help you in forgiveness, because when you're judging the situation, the circumstance, or the person, okay, remember, you're pointing one finger at the person, and look how many fingers are pointing back at you. That's 3 fingers pointing back at you. It's hurting you twice or 3 times fold, okay? 3 times fold. So when it comes to forgiveness, it's not just about forgiving the person, but also forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for reacting toward whatever the situation is, or forgive yourself for not being forgiven. I mean, because there's like layers of this, like literally layers. Like we know we should be forgiving, but I'm having a hard time forgiving. So now I'm beating myself up, not only for not being able to forgive, but also for that circumstances. So it becomes layer amongst layer. And that's why it's important to become equanimous. Just become equanimous in the circumstances. Or the event or the person. Once you're equanimous, that can help you stabilize, because you're not saying one, and even if you stay there, you can stay there for a while. That's fine. Stay there. Do whatever you need to do to stay there, to become equanimous, to be neutral about the circumstances. That's how you can become in forgiveness. You won't be able to come into forgiveness with the seesaw, with the duality. If you're judging, you won't be able to. It's not going to happen. You're going to beat yourself up over and over again. And this is what's going to happen. And I know this from experience. You're going to say it. You're going to go through the actions, the tools, because there's many of them, tools of doing it. But guess what? You will peel off some of the layers of the event that you want to forgive. You'll peel off some of the layers, but the ones that's deeply rooted, it will still be there, and they will surface. And you know it surfaces because something will happen. You will become triggered again. You're like, I thought I worked on that. And you start beating yourself all up over again. And so that's why I want to share with you. The most important thing is, when it comes to forgiveness, you got to get to the root. of it, of all the emotions, not just the one that you're identifying with, like the anger. You're angry because this happened to you. I'm angry the way I was raised. I'm angry because my parents did or didn't do this. I'm angry because I didn't hear this. Okay, so you identify with that anger and you're using that anger to cover all the other emotions. And so then what you're doing is you're saying, okay, I'm ready. I have the intent. I want to forgive. I want to get rid of this anger. And then you may go through some of the tools that I mentioned. You may do, there's a plethora of tools. I mean, again, I talked about tapping. There's all of them. I'll talk about a little of them in just a moment. But you go through those tools, but then something happens and you get triggered all over again. You're like, oh God, I just can't do it. And then you give up. And the reason that you know why you can't give up, you just get frustrated. But the real reason it didn't work is because you only did the surface level work. Surface level. Depending on the event and when it happened, it may be deeply enrooted within you. If it's something like a friend said something upsetting you, that might be a surface level anger. You can forgive that one fairly quickly. Okay. But what happens is when that person said that, I guarantee you, it really wasn't necessarily what they said. You were actually being triggered from another wound that was real deep inside. And that's what I'm saying. It's like we don't know, and this is me as either, we don't know where to go to pinpoint it until you become still and you talk to yourself. And you go back and you set the intention. Number one, you set the intention that you want to get to the root of what's causing you not to be able to release and let go, to forgive regarding that circumstances. Number two, ask God for help. Do not do this alone. You don't have to. Ask for help. And then become still and then listen to the guidance. Once you do that, I guarantee you, okay, set that intention, ask for help. Ask for help. And then sit still. And then ask yourself, go through, you can even say, I want to find the root of this anger. I want to find it. You're not saying that you want to release it. You just want to find it. Find it. And then if you find the anger, what else is there? What other emotions are related to this event? Identify the emotions first before you release it. People are just, that's the thing with other teachers when you're going to healers and that, they're just releasing. And they have great intent. Don't get me wrong. But what I'm sharing with you is whenever you go to someone, myself included, I'm dealing with my guidance and with the guidance of a divine source, and also, with the help of yours, because I'm asking for your guidance as well. Like, in other words, I'm asking your guys to help me as well. Not everyone does that. And even if they do that, if it's something that you are still holding on to, a lot of times what happens is this, and this is truth. And I realize this not from me hearing it myself, but I also realize this from me going to help with other people. And I would wonder, like, if that person is that effective because everyone's saying that, then why didn't they tell me this about myself? Now, this is before I got tapped into my higher self, right? I was like, well, why didn't they tell me? And then once I got tapped into my higher self and then I started doing with other people, a lot of times we're instructed not to say this or not to say that. It's because you're not ready. We know the situation. Like, let's say I'm having a one-on-one with you and it's something regarding healing. I may get all the feeding, all the guidance from higher source saying this, that, and the other. But I also may get no, he or she's not ready. So don't say this. When they're ready, then their guide will let them know. Okay. So that's why I want you to understand that, like, you may go to this person, that person, that person, that person. That's why I'm sharing with you. Stop playing the whack-a-mole. Go inside first. And if you're inside first, if your insight shares with you to go somewhere, then I guarantee you it will work. But if you're just going from here, there, and other because, oh, this person has good, review, and this one recommended this person and blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to say it's not going to be effective, but that's not the most efficient way to handle it. You go inside first. You trust yourself, build the trust and knowing within. And once you have that, if it's something that you need help with, In other words, if there's emotion that's so deeply rooted within you that you're going to need a different perspective because yours is so emotionally tied to that event, then you will be led to a specific teacher or a book or something that you know that will help you. I'm saying go inside out as opposed to outside in. And that requires being still. And when you're still, don't just address the emotion that you are passionate about, because we do become passionate with our emotions, even though you probably don't like the use of that word passionate with emotions, but we do become passionate with a lot of stuff, some that are serving, some that are not serving. But if you're passionate regarding a particular emotion, like for instance, if it's anger, you know that you're angry, you know that. But there may be some shame, some guilt, some hurt. There may be other things that are associated with it that because you're so into that anger that you don't recognize that those play just as an important part in that circumstance. In other words, there's a bundle of emotions. And the thing about emotions is you cannot release them as a bundle without first identifying each of them. And not only that, once you identify them, you're not going to be able to release them all the same at the same time. Some of them are going to take, it's like, I'm not going to say that because that's like really disgusting, but think of like when you're pulling a splinter out, right? Like if you ever had a splinter and you get the tweezers, if you painstakingly like go slow and then you pull it out slow, no matter how slow you try to pull that splinter out, sometimes you just get some of it and some of it still gets stuck. Sometimes you can pull it out in one little splint, but sometimes it just breaks off and then now you got to go through the process again. Well, it's the same thing with your emotions. Sometimes they will come out as a splint or as one particular emotion. And then sometimes like the anger is here and then it's here and then it's here and then it's here. It is all over. And so it's a process. Okay. The problem is we get impatient with the process. We want to pull it all out at one time. And it doesn't work like that all the time. Sometimes it will, sometimes it doesn't. And then not only that, when it comes to releasing your emotions, it's important that you get in touch with your body to ask yourself how much is too much. You don't release too much too soon. You're not going to be able to do that. You won't be able to do that. You won't. So you ask your body, like get into the mindset of trusting you as a whole, not just your higher self, but your ego self with this body. Like you're put into this body we're spiritual beings, and this is our body that we come here to face this reality with. Talk to this body. How much do I need? Like what emotions, how many can I release right now? And then how can I release it? What are some of the ways I can release it? And if you're still and you're patient with yourself, I guarantee you will have the answers that you need. So hopefully, Mimi, I answered your question. But when it comes to that trying times, it's about being equanimous. It's about being neutral. It's when you're judging it, you're not going to be able to balance being judgmental, because you're putting your emphasis on saying this is bad and I was done wrong and blah, blah, blah. You're not opening up yourself to another perspective. In order to have balance, you have to be able to see multiple sides, okay? And even I'm saying multiple sides because I'm showing you just the linear balance, okay? It's really not just linear, but because we're in this 3D, we can understand the seesaw, or the balance of justice, or a scale, which is two sides. So that's why I'm showing it to you linear, but it's not linear at all. It really isn't. But I'm sharing with you that if you're not equanimous, like if you're just judging one versus the other, there's not going to ever be a balance. But if you're equanimous, neutral, now you're open up to seeing different perspectives, the 360 perspective, okay? Not just the linear perspective. All right, so, and that's why I wanted to say about the forgiveness. And when you can tell when it's been released. One, it's going to be a process. One, just let you know that now, depending on the circumstance, obviously. But you're going to know when you're finally over it. And for me, this was huge. Now, one of the things, this wasn't about forgiveness, but again, it's about a deeply set emotion. The death of my father hit me hard. My dad died in 97. I'm not lying when I say I was still grieving up until last year, literally, because I never processed the emotions related to that. I literally, and at the time I didn't have my son, so I don't even know what I did to avoid it, but I avoided it. I didn't grieve. And it was only through one of the techniques that I'll share with you, which is EMDR. That's another way that you can release emotions. That's how I identified that I was grieving. I never realized I was still grieving from my dad. Like things would happen and I never attributed it to me being grieving for my dad. And then when I did the EMDR, which is a form of therapy that's not a talk therapy, it's basically where you're holding, like there's different types of EMDR, but the one I did, I had earphones on. It was just like a pulsation in my ears, and that's all it was. There was no talking. And then I just went, it was like I went through a train ride of my life, and I got to see different aspects of my life. And at the same time, I had another friend that she was holding paddles. So there's different types of EMDR out there as well, but that's how it was brought to my attention that I was still grieving for my father. Okay. And mind you, he died in 97. This is what, 2019. So up into 2018, I was still, still grieving over 20 years. And how I know that I'm over it is that now I can talk about circumstances with him and I not tear up. Don't get me wrong, I'll still get sad, don't get me wrong, but I know I can tell the difference. Okay, I can tell that I allowed myself to grieve, over finally I allowed the grief to come out. So that now, yeah, I still can get sad, but it's not the same thing. In other words, I know the difference. Okay, so when you become triggered by something, like really, really triggered, like, I mean, you're like, oh, what? Oh, I just reacted like that. Like, what's that coming from? That's when you know that you have not released the emotion. And like I shared with you about the grief of my dad, you may be triggered with something out of the blue. Like somebody could just say, I don't know, somebody can just say, I don't like your glasses, or those glasses don't look good on you, and you just blow up from them. And you didn't realize it was still an anger that you had from a childhood abuse. It's like that. It's like sometimes if you're not still and you don't ask for the connection, it seems disconnected. Like that was a disconnected response to that. But it really is connected because it's deeply rooted into that emotion that you're feeling. And we're emotional beings. And we have to get those emotions out of us, but we're taught, particularly men, to hold on to our emotions. And that herein lies is the challenges that we face. Okay, so I'm just kind of look at my notes here. Just be patient with yourself, okay, and understand that when it comes to forgiveness, don't put a time frame on your forgiveness. As long as you have the intent and you're working through the process, you're on the roll. But don't just say, okay, I have the intent to forgive. I'm now forgiving the person, and then all of a sudden you're triggered, but you're now in denial that you really haven't forgiven the person. Okay, so in other words, there will be circumstances that come up over and over again to let you know whether or not you really have released that emotion. Okay, because some of them are deeply rooted that we don't even know. I'm talking about like deeply rooted, and trust me, I've had them as well. Like that grief was one that was really deeply rooted. Okay, but important that you have the patience and the willingness to address it, because sometimes, again, over 20 years, I'm not saying it's going to take you that long. That's not it at all. I didn't know I was grieving. Like once I found out that it was, and I worked on it and I was able to release it, I'd say it still took me probably about 2 or 3 years to release it, probably more like 3 or 4 years to release it, but because I wasn't actively working on it, because it become painful. And sometimes that happens. Like sometimes it's so deeply rooted in you, like that grief was, it's sort of like when you've probably heard of or seen it, if you've not experienced yourself, like a whale crying, where it's that deeply like welling cry, where like you're just so hurt, like it's that soul cry. That was what was suppressed within me, and I didn't let it out. So I couldn't just open up the bottle and just let it out. It would have wreaked havoc on my life. I had to like open it, like, sort of like like if you shake up a champagne bottle and then you open up and it pops up and it spews out. I wasn't gonna have that happen because all the champagne was spilled out and it's out of control. I shook it up because I found out I was grieving. I had to let that bottle sit. I had to let it sit for a while. But I knew I was still in the process, but I had to let it sit. And then when I felt ready to address it, I would open it up a little at a time to let it seep out, because I wasn't in a rush. And that's what happens with some of you, with some of the emotions. You want to shake it up and get it all out. That's not going to be effective for you. It's not going to happen like that, because it's going to wreak havoc on your life. It literally will wreak havoc. So sometimes you need to let the bottle sit, but you still know that you're working on it. Like the bottle's right there. But just let it sit, let the stuff settle down. Be patient with it, and then open up the cork a little at a time and let it go. Let it go, and just be patient with the letting go. So it really depends on you and how soon. Like if you want to open up that cork, good luck on it. Good luck. All right. I'm not saying it can't happen. It can. For me, that just wasn't the way I chose to do it. But for you, if that's what you want to do, and I'm not saying it's going to take forever. That's not it at all. What I'm saying is, you know how long it takes, because only you know yourself, and you know the circumstances, and you know when you're really willing and ready to give up. Because a lot of times you're saying it, you're rationalizing, you're consciously saying that you're ready to forgive, but subconsciously you're holding on to that. You want to hold on to that, and you know it. You do know it. You know yourself. You're denying it, and you know it. I know you know it. That's why I'm smiling, because I know. Yeah, you're like shaking your head, like you're like, no, yeah, no, yeah. You do know it. But when you're ready, and it's okay. You don't have to be ready right now. Okay, you may decide to let that bottle sit. But while that bottle is sitting, don't judge it. It's neutral. Because when you start judging that bottle, now what's happening again is now you've shaken it up again. It's not settling. It's still being shaken up, because now you're judging. Now you're in the trying times. You're not being balanced. It's because you're judging. Stop judging. Stop doing it. Okay. What else? What else is going on? Anything else? All right. All right. So forgive me. So again, I'm not going to say that. I'm cautious with my analogy. I was about to say I don't want to beat that dead horse again, but I don't want to talk about beating horses. It's not right. Okay, but I don't want to. I'll just move on. Okay, so forgiveness. And a lot of what we're going through in this challenge, like for instance, we're talking about fasting, and a lot of the pains and the things that you're going through is rooted in forgiveness. And that's why I want to spend a lot of time on that, because it really is. There's something in your life that you're not forgiving. There's something that needs to be addressed. And you may not consciously be aware of it. Remember, I did not know I was still grieving for my dad. I knew I was sad, like I couldn't talk about him without tearing eyed, but I mean, it was my parent. I mean, someone I really loved. I didn't realize that it affected all the areas of my life that it did. I really didn't, until it was brought to my attention that I was grieving. Then I was able to see the connection of it. And that's what I'm sharing with you. Keep in mind, the purpose of your ego is to protect, self-preservation, right? It protects you. And it does that by lying to you, whatever it needs to do to protect you. It's when that higher self comes in, that divine source. Remember, I talked about the shaking up of the glass. When the higher source comes in, and then the ego sees that the higher source still wants your protection as well, but your higher source wants to shine the light on everything so that you're aware, wants you to have that awareness, where the ego doesn't necessarily want you to have awareness, it wants to protect you. So if awareness if your ego thinks that awareness, which is not going to, is going to protect you, then it'll give you the awareness, but it's not going to. It's going to hide it. It's going to put it into your subconscious mind where you're not thinking about it. Okay, and that's what I'm sharing with you. Get still and let the higher source come in and shine that light. Because remember, the ego, when the ego and the higher source work together, that's right there is when you have the goal. Like that's when you've unlocked the master key, is when they're working together. Okay, get to that point. But it takes patience to get to that point. It's just not going to happen overnight. You know, it's just not going to happen that way. All right. So then the next thing I wanted to talk about, which kind of rolls on with this as well, is about being patient. Okay. Being patient with yourself and in the process. I know, again, this is a 33-day challenge. But as you can see, there's still people that have been in the challenge longer than 33 days. And it's because what happens is when you're doing this inner work, sometimes you're going to have to pause because it's a lot. And life goes on. I mean, I'm not talking about you pausing because, okay, I'm busy. That's not what I'm talking about. I was talking about you're pausing sort of like I was talking about shaking up the bottle. You're shaking up some stuff and you're like, oh gosh, this is a lot. I need to step back. And I understand that, which is why I'm like, okay, I'm saying 33 days because it's a process. But I already know it's going to take, I'm not going to say it's going to, yeah, it's going to take long. I'm not going to lie to you. But because it's not about the destination, this is a journey. You're on the journey. So these 33 days is a 33-day journey, but this is a journey that for the rest of your life you're on. I'm still doing this. Like the process that you're going through, I do the same thing. I still meditate and go through the same things. It's not something that, all of a sudden you get the tools and I get to knowing that, okay, I know everything. It doesn't work that way. And I'm about to share a story with you that just happened today, that I got another awareness. And it's funny because the second thing that I want to talk about before this happened today was about being patient with yourself in the process. And so I want to share with you a story that happened to me today. So I flew back from Atlanta, and I had the TSA pre-check, and the pre-check line was long, but it was moving. And I wasn't in any rush or anything like that because I got to the airport around 8. My flight wasn't till like 10. So I'm fine. I wasn't stressed out or just going through the line or whatever, just smiling, just having fun, just in the moment of like looking at the people in Atlanta airport. If you've ever been there, I'm talking about it's just a lot of people. And so I'm just admiring the situation and just taking it all in, being in the present moment, right? And then I was able to get through. Like I said, the line was moving very quickly, and I even got to the point where it split off, and then there was other lines this way. But 2 agents happened to open up a line over here where I was able to go right there to a line and get to where they're now about to check my luggage. Okay, so then once I got past the agents checking my boarding pass, now they had 2 separate lines to get through the machines where you put your luggage on the machine. I just went to the one on the left just because that's just the way I was led to go. Now, keep in mind, there's no accidents. Now, I noticed the one on the right, there was people that were coming after me. That one was moving quickly. Now, that was the one that was the automated one. If you've ever been to Atlanta airport, or one of those airports where the bins pop up underneath it and you put on top, put your stuff in and it rolls. It's sort of like a automatic assembly line. Well, the one I was in wasn't like that. It was one of those where you have to push your bag into the thing and then walk through the thing, through the metal detector. This line, I swear we were probably there about 15, 20 minutes. It seemed like it. But again, I wasn't, I was just patiently waiting. Like, I'm just like patiently waiting. I wasn't upset. I'm not in a hurry. And I'm just watching, other people going on, just, listening. And then some people made some little comments about, how slow the line was. And I did recognize, like, oh my God, like, this is unusually slow. But again, I'm not in a worry. I'm not in a hurry. So I was just patiently waiting through it. Okay. So then once it finally goes through, both of my bags get flagged. So I had a purse and then I had another bag. Both of my bags get flagged to be checked by the TSA people. And then, by the way, before that happened, when I went through the metal detector, it buzzed. So I took off my earrings. It buzzed. So then they were like, do you have any bracelets? Like I have these on. Those shouldn't be it. He said, so they had me go through the machine where you have to stand on your head. Now mine is TSA, so this is not what I normally have to do. So I had to open my legs and put my hands over my head. And then then she said, oh, I got to pat you down. It turned out to be my necklace. Okay. It turned out to be this necklace that caused the buzzing. But again, I would just process, like smile through the process, like, okay, whatever. It's funny because when I came there, or, when I left to go to Atlanta, I had on the same stuff, but okay, different machines, whatever. So by that time, that's when I noticed that both of my bags had been off to the side, and then I had to have them checked. All right. So the funny thing is, and this is not funny, haha, it's like, okay, like ironically funny, is that in my purse, it was my red vines that was the culprit. Yeah, I gotta be careful those deadly red vines, right? Yeah, they're deadly. It can make the alarm go off in the TSA pre-check machine. And then on my suitcase, my mom had bought me these bookends that had amethyst rock on it, these glass bookcases, very, very beautiful. And so they opened up my suitcase and then he unwrapped it, and then I had to swab it. Well, when he swabbed it, it red flagged something. And they're like, okay, now we got to pat you down. I'm like to myself, like, you got to be kidding. Like, I'm not lying to you guys. I've never had this type of excitement at the airport ever before. Again, I'm TSA pre-check. This doesn't happen to me. But again, I'm like, this point, I'm not going to lie. I was getting a little impatient with these people because I saw the inefficiency of what they were doing. I was like, this is so inefficient, like just so inefficient. But I was like trying to, like in my mind, just talk to myself, just stay aware, just be positive, whatever. So the lady literally had to come and tell me how she's going to pat down the crack of my butt and my breast and this, that, and the other. I'm like, lady, just do it. She said, well, I got to tell you. I said, okay, but just do it. She said, you want to let's just do it. So literally she's like patting me down. And then something told me to tell her because at this point, again, it's getting, I'm not stressed because I have plenty of time. It's like, there's a reason this is happening to me. And so then I was like, can you press a little harder? She's like, what? I said, because you're giving me a massage. So can you go a little harder? So I'm like making the joke. She's like, well, I didn't want to be a masseuse. So I was talking to the lady, like having a joke with it, whatever. And so then we got done with it. And then that was fine. I said, okay, do you need a tip? I was like being funny with her. And so I left that, right? And then on the way home, I do voice recording. I think I shared that with you guys. I do audio recordings. Thank you, Mimi, for that suggestion. I do audio recordings, and I was reliving my whole trip because that was the first time I was able to do audio recording since coming back. And I relate what happened in the TSA, and I said, there's a reason why I went through that. Why? And I didn't say why. I basically said, I wonder if, I can't remember how I said it, but in other words, I'm letting you know I was asking. I knew there was a reason why I went through that, because that doesn't happen. I can remember when things come about in your circumstances, and I'm sharing this with you, Karen. So, pay attention as we're going through different things that are different situations in our life. There's a reason for it. Just be patient and ask for the reason, and then just be open for however it shows. So I asked for the reason, and because I was saying to myself, I was being very patient. So, I was being patient. I was being very patient where I could have not, and I was like, I was going through the reasons why I was patient, because I wasn't, one, I'm just being patient because I wasn't stressed. Time wasn't a factor. I was just in the moment. So I was able to be patient. But then it was like, okay, Pia, you were patient then. But where's the time where you hadn't been patient? And not just about outside sources. I'm talking about with you. So I'm like, and then mind you, when you open up yourself to the question, the answer comes too. And then sometimes the answer, you may be like in denial of it. I was like, because immediately in my mind, I knew exactly what it was talking about. I was like, oh God, okay, you're right. And the patience, the part that I was being impatient with is I share with you guys that I'm going through as well the 45 days with the intuition and with the knowingness of myself, because I shared with you that I have the knowingness. Well, keep in mind that even though I'm saying that I have the knowingness, there's layers to knowingness. It's not like I just get 100%, that's it. But I'm sharing with you when I say I have 100% knowing, I mean, I have 100% certainty that whatever my higher self says is truth. Okay, that is true. Now, however, it's not like I'm just like, oh, because I call my higher self Kaya. It's not like, oh, Kaya, blah, blah, blah. And like we have like conversation like this. Sometimes it happens like that. But sometimes I'll ask a question and Kaya doesn't answer me right away. That's when I become impatient. Remember, I share with you. Now I want to know the answer, but you're taking too long to answer me. So now I'm going to go out and look for it. And that's what that lesson was to me. Was there was times, and not just that, I was given specific circumstances where I asked something of my higher self, and I went outside instead of waiting for the answer because I was being impatient. And that's what I'm sharing with you guys as well. Like my experience, I'm sharing from my experience. Be patient with yourself, that when you're asking these questions, when you're going through these prompts, if the answers don't come immediately, be patient. Be patient with yourself. They will come. They will. You just got to be patient, because a lot of times what happens is the answers will come. They'll start coming, and then we're happy that we're actually able to hear them. And then we expect them to come in the time frame or the manner that it came the times before. Where now it's a different, it's a different, again, 360. It's not linear. So there's 360 to it. So now it's going to come a different way, but because we're used to it coming this way, we're trying to get to it this way. And it's like, no, we're over here now. We've already got that one. You got that one. Now we need to work on this one. But you're not, now you're impatient because it's like, okay, I was doing this. Sort of like the yes or no that I'm asking you to do for the 45 days. And you ask yes, you ask no, and you get the feeling of yes, you know what the feeling of no is. Well, for me, what happens is, as I'm going through that, because I shared with you that this is a practice that I'm instituting after the fact. In other words, my answers with my higher self was me having open-ended questions. I'm going back to do the yes and no to solidify it, because again, it's about growth. I don't ever want to say I'm 100%, anything. There's always, there's always room for growth. And so I'm going back to the yes or no. And this is the example that happened. I was playing Sudoku on my phone. Okay. And typically when I'm playing Sudoku, I don't like any outside help. Like I just, my way to just get my mind onto just playing that game and just to zone out, if you will. But because I was working on the yes or no of the higher self, I said, well, let's play the game Sudoku with my higher self, with Kaya, and she can give me the answers without me having to check. And so I was going through and say, okay, is this a 9? Yes or no? And I would wait for it. And then if it was no, then, because by then I would have narrowed it down between 1 or 2. Okay, so it's either a 9 or a 7, in other words. And I said, okay, is this a 9? And then yes, and then 9, 7. And so that was going perfectly, like that, no problem. Well, remember, I already know that's not going to work. I mean, that's going to work. Well, then Kai wanted me to get off of that and go to another game that's I don't have patience with. It's another intuitive game where it's actually four colored squares, blue, red, yellow, and green. And then behind a square is a picture. And what you're supposed to do is figure out what color the picture is behind. I don't have a lot of patience for that one because I don't get that one right a lot because I'm not asking, yes, no, it's literally like you're staring at it and you're using another portion of your intuitive skill set to figure out what the answer is. And so like I might get 2 out of 10. Sometimes I get 5 out of 10. Sometimes I get 3. Like there's no consistency and I don't have patience. And so it was showing with me, there's times in my life that I don't have patience with my higher self as well. So have patience is number 2. Okay, so forgiveness and patience is the 2 I want to talk about. And then the third one is allowing. And again, for me, it all boils down to allowing because I think I shared with you guys that I'm left brain trained as an accountant. I'm analytical. Everything I process on my left brain, like I'm doing research, all of that is about left brain activities, right? Wait, I'm mirroring you, left brain activities. Well, allowing is important because when you're working with your higher self and you're working with your subconscious, it's about allowing. It's not about you thinking an answer and the thought the answer is going to come. It's about allowing the answer. So understand that when you're going through this yes or no, it's not that you're thinking the answer, you're allowing it to occur. So be patient with yourself and working on the allowance of it. Okay, don't a lot of times we get caught up into how we were trained to think this and analyze this, like I'm analyzing the situation. Well, that's using your rationalization and thinking skills. That's left brain. And keep in mind, we're dealing with the higher self. That's more of a right brain. It's more of the emotions, more of the allowing. So allow the answers to come to you in whatever manner that they may come, in its own time, not in your time, and not at your parameters. Because recall that we talked about the subconscious and the conscious mind. Your conscious mind is limited. Your subconscious mind is unlimited. Literally unlimited, which is why you don't ask how. Don't ever ask how something's going to happen. I remember the last Q&A I shared with you when it comes to money, like we can come up with a few number of ways to get money quickly, but the universe and God can have an infinite number of ways. I kid you not. That was on a Monday. I went and checked my post office box on Tuesday. There was 2 checks in the mail that I was not expecting. And that's what I'm sharing with you. The universe has ways, like an endless, and I wasn't even asking for money per se. I did that broadcast on Monday about allowing it and showing how, like, if we're thinking about different ways it's going to come, we're limiting ourselves. But if we just open up and just allow it, it's an unlimited possibility. And I got 2 checks that I was not expecting, 2 of them. So again, don't worry about the how and don't worry about the why. Don't do this why, this lamenting about why, woe is me. Don't do that. Be in amazement, like wonder, like I wonder if, I wonder. Wonder is good. Why is lamenting? Don't try to stay away from that. All right. And then last but not least is about I put down self-kindness because it all comes in together when we beat ourselves up because it's not working the way that we think it should work. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Dr. Emoto. So Dr. Emoto did an experiment with water. You can research this, for those of you that want to do the research, because keep in mind, things I share with you, I want you to know, I love doing research. I love reading. That's just, I consider myself a lifetime student. So I do the research. It's just when I'm sharing it with you. I don't necessarily bring in research a lot of times because that's what we're so geared toward. Well, where's the scientific proof? Well, what about the proof that science can't prove? Does that make it less believable? Remember I shared with you about how it's, literally they say, like, scientifically, how can you prove that 100, at the most 150-pound man can lift up a heavy car off of another human being? It happened. So there's certain things that science can't prove. So, in other words, just being open-minded and just thinking about resonating. Does it resonate with you or not? Not being judgmental. Like, in other words, scientific is like, I need to have proof. Why do you need to have proof? And what if the proof comes into a way what if the proof is open to show in this way, a different way, but you're so set on this way, and that's what your perspective is trying to show you, and it's not going to uh, solidify that particular way, if you will. In other words, it wants to come another way, but you're so hell bent on this way that that's all you're looking for is this way, and it's not going to ever work. And so then you're going. It's like a what do they call it? Self-defeating prophecy, where you're saying it's not going to work unless you show me this. Well, it's not going to show you that, so then therefore it doesn't work. No, it does work, but it's not going to work the way that you're saying it has to. Okay. In other words, so when I talk about self-kindness and about Dr. Emoto, I'm sharing his scientific experiment he did with water. And what he did was he had different jars of water, if you will. And then he, like for instance, water, he did different types of experiment. Water that he prayed like beautiful words with, like did gratitude toward, like said gratitude toward the water, and then looked at the water underneath the microscope, and then he took another water where they were saying hateful words or cursing words at the water, and looked up under that on the microscope, and you could actually see the difference. The ones that he was showing like kindness and gratitude and joy, like those type of words, they had very beautiful crystallized versions of it underneath the microscope. Whereas and again, you can look this all up, like go Google Dr. Emoto, water experiment, you'll see it. And then the ones that he did, like even did music, where one water he played classical music and look underneath the microscope, and one water where he played hard rock music. And again, there's a significant difference between the ones that were showing positive words or reinforcement or kind, compassion, joy, as opposed to hate or rock. Not saying hate is rock, I'm saying like, those types of different frequencies, if you will. And he looked up under the microscope, and they're different. And again, you have to see it for yourself to see what it looks like. The reason why I share this with you is this. Our body is made up of at least 70%. Now, some people say some people, again, scientists vary between 70 and 80%. But think about it. When we were embryo, we were up to like 99% water. And I share this with you is because when you're saying those mean words to yourself, or when you're around those words, you're absorbing that. It's important when you're going through this transformation, because in this 33 days, there's a transformation going on. When you leave out of this challenge, it's my hope that you're not the same person that came into it. You're going to go like a metamorphosis, a change, a total change. And when you're in that cocoon, or in this, when I say cocoon, now I'm talking about during this challenge period, think of it like a cocoon. So it's very important that you're very selective around who's around you, your environment, your circumstances, and what you're in, because it's that important. Because now you're opening up yourself to the possibility of trusting your higher self and of hearing from divine source. So it's going to leave you kind of vulnerable. So when you're saying unkind words to yourself, if you're being impatient with yourself, understand that you're absorbing that. Your body's absorbing that, and it's reacting from that. So that's why I'm sharing that experiment with you, because our bodies are water. It's made up of water. So when you're saying those unkind words to yourself, even if you don't say them out loud, particularly when you're thinking those thoughts. Remember I talked about words, thoughts, and actions, or feelings, I should say. Words are just our expressions. The thoughts are more of a vibration, and the feelings are even more of a vibration that's speaking to the universe. So when you're thinking mean words to yourself because, I'm in this challenge and I can't meet my goals. Now you're beating yourself up. Okay, just understand that when you're doing that, it's really affecting you. And that's what I'm saying. Be kind and be patient with yourself. Wake up with every single day as a brand new slate. It doesn't matter what you did in the past. During this graduation, my sister, Sherry, who's also in the challenge, she said some beautiful words to my niece, and she mentioned about how, think of it like you're driving, and what's in front of you is the windshield. You're looking at the windshield. But what's also in the car is the rearview mirror. And she said, you see the rearview mirror, what's behind you. But don't spend so much time in a rearview mirror reflecting on what's behind you that you totally miss what's in front of you. And so I want to share that with you as well, is that stop beating yourself up what you didn't do yesterday and what you didn't do yesterday. Today is a new slate. What are you going to do today? And stop piling so much on your plate so that you're not able to do it. If today your main thing, because I'm not gonna lie, sometimes my intent for the day is literally just to have fun or just to be joyful. Like sometimes that's just what I write down. Like that's my intent, is just to be joyful. Okay. Sometimes it's like that. Like sometimes, or I just need to rest. Whatever it is. And if I do other things, like let's say I say just to rest. That's all I want to do today is just rest. If I do other things, that's a plus. But I'm not trying to pile stuff on my plate when I know I just need to rest. So when you start piling up stuff on your plate, you're setting up yourself for failure. Put down something. What's your intent for the day? What is your intent? Your main intent. And then go based upon that. Now it may be, okay, my intent, you're saying, but I'm doing that with tasks. But how many tasks are you doing? And are these the tasks that are really the tasks that you want to do? Because recall that I mentioned about the subconscious and the conscious mind. The drill sergeant will say, do these tasks. And then the recruits will say, yes, drill sergeant, right? But if they're saying yes, drill sergeant, but they're not doing it, then understand that they're not saying yes, drill sergeant. They're saying yes, drill sergeant to the opposite of it. Because, and this is going to be like, hopefully, I know it's getting long. I'm about to close off here, I promise. This may be a little complicated, but when it comes to law of attraction, just understand that there's two. Esther Hicks said it the best. And I can't recall at this moment how she said it, but for every circumstances, there's the circumstance and the opposite of it is what I want to say. So in other words, you're thinking that you want to do this task, but that's what you're consciously saying, you want to do this task, but really you don't want to do these tasks. And that's why the subconscious mind is saying, yes, I'm not going to do this task, which is why you're not doing the task. Because if you really wanted to do those tasks, like you're saying you're going to do those tasks, and you really want to do those tasks, you would do those tasks. You understand how it works? So if you're consciously trying to write out goals, yet subconsciously, and there's no actions related to those goals, understand it's because subconsciously you don't want to do it. So then but you may say, consciously I do. Well, yeah, consciously you do, but it's the subconscious that needs to be worked on. In other words, why don't you want to do those? What's hindering you from wanting to do those goals? And that's where the inner work comes into play, because you sit down and say, okay, I really do want to do this. So what's hindering me? Why isn't it being done? And then leave yourself open up to hearing the real truth, because the truth will always be shown to you. But a lot of times, and I do it as well, we negate the truth. No, that's not it. No, that really was it. That one first thought that you negated was the real truth, but you negated it. So if you have tasks that you want to get done and you're not doing them for whatever reason, I'm saying for whatever reason, that whatever reason is what you want to address in your meditation. Understanding why. What is the why? This case, in other words, what's happening of why you don't want to do these tasks. Like what there's something else. It may not even be the task. It literally may be some emotions that's suppressed, that's being triggered, that these tasks are, because again, we're complex. We think in terms of logic, but logic doesn't work with the subconscious mind. So in other words, there's some thoughts, there's some values or some belief systems that's deeply tied to why you're not getting those tasks done. So even though consciously you set up the goals and make sure that they're smart and all of this, that, and the other, you're doing what you're supposed to do, but yet your actions you're not taking the actions. It's because there's something within your subconscious mind, some type of value or belief system that you're holding that needs to be addressed to why you're not getting those tasks done. And it requires you to be patient with yourself in understanding the process, or not understanding the process. Like seriously, because I don't even understand the process. And that's a lot of times when I'm saying something, I'll tell my guys, I'm understanding. Like I don't say I understand, because I don't understand. I'm not going to say I understand it. I'm understanding means I'm open to the possibility of the awareness of it. And that's how I like to keep it. I don't ever want to get to a point where I'm putting a period behind the knowing, because that's when you get into problems. And that's what happens to a lot of teachers out there. And I'm going to be honest with you. They get to a point where they put a period behind it. In other words, they have the guidance from their guides, and then they become complacent and they put a period and they stop learning, they stop growing, and they get involved into the teaching of it, which there's nothing wrong with that. The problem is if you're not constantly growing, you're going to be stagnant to a point. And then I've been in this situation. This is truth, where I had a spiritual teacher. I had a teacher where in his mind, I could tell this, he perceived that I was getting higher than what he was. And so he became threatened. And that can happen if the person doesn't continue to grow. Or even if the person is growing and they're still comparing themselves with you. And that, my friends, is the last thing I want to talk about when it comes to that self-care, kindness. When it comes to self-kindness, that means you're not comparing yourself to anyone. No matter where anyone is on their journey, understand that when you're comparing, you're comparing from a 3D consciousness. You're comparing from a linear standpoint. So let's say, for instance, I'm trying to use myself. I'm trying to put myself outside of it. But let's say, for instance, I'll use my son. There we go. I'll put myself in and use my son. Let's say that he has an understanding that far exceeds mine. And here I am, like 48 years old. And I'm like, dude, I'm like 30 years older than you. But it's not about that, because now I'm comparing myself to him from a 3D standpoint. There are certain things that he can learn faster than I can, or that he's aware of that I'm not. So I'm not going to compare myself to him. I'm not going to say just because you're 18 or just because you're 16, just because you're 13 or just because you're 30, I can't learn from you. Okay? That's what happens with the self-care. We start comparing where we are in our journey to other people, and you never know you don't know no one's whole story. No one knows my whole story. You only know the snippets that I tell you, but you don't know the whole story. So when you're comparing from a false comparison. You're comparing from, remember I talked about that starting point from your house and you go running? You're comparing from that point, that perspective. And that's not always the accurate perspective. So stop comparing yourself with other people and where they are on their journey. Oh, it seems like this person, I got this before, I've been working with my higher self. Like even me, I've been working with my higher self, but yet someone comes along and they got like this. It doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter. It's where you are. Be kind to yourself, because when you're comparing, now what happens? You're judging. Who are you judging? You're judging yourself. And that's what happens. We get into this downward spiral. And the world is so inundated with ways and hooks for us to keep coming back to get to that standpoint where we become frustrated and we give up. That's the game. That's the game that we're playing out here in this 3D reality. So they want us to give up. But I'm sharing with you, if you just stay connected to the higher source, okay, to your divine source, whoever you may call it, for me it's God. And remember the God light within you. And again, I'm calling it your higher self. Some people call it your intuition. Like there's different names. The soul. These are all just labels. It's that you know what that is. It's that feeling within you that is unexplainable. It's that feeling that when you get on the elevator and there's a prickiness, your skin stands up on the back of your hair because someone sketchy got in. You don't know why. Like you just, that person, I don't even say they have to look sketchy. Just something on the back of your neck, or there's something in your gut. There's a feeling that you have that's innately within you. That's what I'm sharing with you, is what I'm saying is your higher source, which is your soul part of you. It's the godlike source in you. This goes by many names. It doesn't matter the names. It doesn't matter the label. Get in touch with the feeling of it. That's what I want you to share. It doesn't matter who calls what. Get in touch with the feeling of knowing who you are, of knowing your higher self, of knowing that when you're asking the question, that the answers will come. And again, I can't share with you how they're going to come. Sometimes the come for me is mainly a knowing. But then sometimes it comes, sometimes I'll get a hearing. It might be a thought. It might be a phone call. It might be a billboard. It might be a text. It comes, just be open. Don't get used to one way of hearing things or one way of being. You know how we talk about human beings? We're a human being. Okay, and there's several ways to be. Get away from being a human doing. Okay. And that's what this world is teaching us, is become a doer. It's not about the doing. So if you wake up exhausted for 3 days in a row and that all you need to do is rest, there's a reason why you're exhausted. You need the rest. That means there's something going on. And it's not necessarily related to what you think it is, but there's definitely something going on within you, and your body is letting you know. Your body will let you know. And that's why I'm sharing with you guys. I get so passionate with this, because I know it works. because it's the way we were designed. Our body speaks to us. You can actually talk to your body. So I'm sharing with you, there's all these diets out there. You don't really need them. You need them if you think you need them. Yeah, I'll go with that. It's true. If you believe you need them, then you absolutely need them. What I'm sharing with you is that you can actually talk to your body and tell your body, get to know your body, get to know how it reacts when you're eating certain types of food. And then even if it reacts that certain way, you're talking to your body and say, okay, I know that that I'm lactose intolerant, but I really love my cereal. Okay. And I don't want to have almond milk or soy milk, or whatever. I want the cow milk. Can you not, talk to your body? Can we work something out? Like, in other words, talk to your body and you will negotiate with yourself. You can do this, but it requires that you have that knowing that it will work and that belief. Because once you have that belief, you will see. I'm sharing this with you guys. The other day, it was Thursday. I went running for the first time. I can tell you last time I went running. I ran, and this time, I don't even know. I want to say it was 30 minutes because I had my Nike timer on it. It was 30 minutes. I don't know how far I ran, but I ran for 30 minutes. Oh gosh, it was hard because I hadn't been running for a while. But I was patient with myself. I was kind, saying, okay, Pia, if you need to walk, walk. Don't try to force yourself to run just because you're a runner and you always like to. No, if you need to walk, run. But I share that with you is because as far as my weight concerned, now mind you, I don't weigh myself. I don't have a scale, but I do have clothes, and not just baggy clothes, so I can tell how my clothes fit. And I put on these one pants that because I hadn't been exercising for a while, I thought I was gonna have to like suck it in to button it. They were loose. I'm sharing this with you because this is what I've been doing. Like this, I do experiments. Like I use myself as a guinea pig. When I say use myself, in other words, I've been doing it all along. I just didn't realize I was doing it. I would talk to myself and say, I tell my food before I eat. And I think I shared this with you guys. Whatever my body needs, let it absorb. Whatever it doesn't need, then let it release. And then when I'm releasing, however I'm releasing, I'm thanking the releasing. Like I literally I say, okay, thank you for that releasing. And I thank my body. So I not only just talk to my higher self, I also talk to my body. I'm sharing that to share with you that it is possible, because your body will let you know if you're exhausted. And I'm just sharing with you because keep in mind, when you guys are talking with me, I get what's going on, right? I'm not going to lie to you. I get that's a gift of mine. I can understand what's going on, but I'm not going to necessarily tell you. I'll give you like little hints, like little leeway, because I want you to develop the trust within yourself so that you can get to knowing. And then let's say, for instance, you say, well, Pia, this has happened, and I think it's, I talk to myself and this, that, the other, then I'll collaborate with you. I'm like, oh yeah, that's the same thing I got too. Or I may say, I got that, but what about, have you thought about this? But I'm not gonna just come out and say, okay, look at this, or look at this. Sometimes I do if I feel a frustration within you, then I'll say, okay, look at this. But anytime it has to do with exhaustions, that's emotions. There's emotions that's being suppressed. There's a way there's something that you're not expressing yourself. Okay, so your body will let you know first. It's just that we don't get in touch with our body, so we ignore those symptoms. But it shows up on our body first all the time, all the time, all the time. And not only that, can I kind of lead you into something else, like another layer? Anything that happens in your life on the outside, there's a spiritual basis for it. Because remember, I just shared with you about the patience. Like I knew there was a reason why that happened to me. That ever happened to me at the airport. Like literally, usually people, I hear other people talk about their TSA stories. I'm just kind of laughing. Every once in a while, like back in the past, I had them, but like that just hasn't happened to me. It just doesn't. So for this whole event that happened to me today, I knew there was a reason. There was something for me to address. And because I knew it and I was open to it and I was laughing about it, I was open myself to be able to receive it. So work your way up to that particular knowing, but it requires you to be patient. It's a process. And even when I think I'm like good, I don't like to use good or bad, but you know what I'm saying? Like even when I'm like, oh yeah, I got this. Oh, trust me, I get curveballs too. And I'm like, okay, what's next? But what the thing is my attitude about it. I'll be like, oh my God, I'm stressed out. Oh God, what now? It's like, okay, guys, you're playing with me now. Like literally, I'm talking like that. I'm like, okay, you're playing with me now. Okay, really? Like really, you did that to me? Like really, why? Like I'm talking to him like this because it's an attitude. It's not It's not like this woe is me, like, why did this happen? Like, that doesn't make sense. I mean, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and why isn't this happening? One more story. So look at the time. I'm actually doing good on time, but one more story. I attended this event one time, and one lady was talking to a guy that was channeling someone, and she was sharing that I've been doing all this spiritual work, and I should be this, but I'm not where I should be, and I don't understand why. What is it that I'm doing wrong? And what he shared with her is that is her whole perspective of it. It's like we think that because we do certain levels of work, we should be at a certain level. That's a linear thought. Get away from that linear thought. It's about the process. Be happy with where you are now. And where you are to now, if you want to be somewhere else, then ask to be that somewhere else. Wake up with a new slate and leave the past in the past, including what happened yesterday. Leave it in the past. Stop revisiting it. Stop telling your friends about it. Stop telling yourself about it, because when you're telling your friends about it, you're reliving it. You're literally reliving it. When you're telling yourself, you're reliving it. Leave it in the past. Wake up with a brand new slate every single morning and set your intentions. Very, very important. And I mentioned that I set intentions. I set daily intentions. What I don't share enough is that I also set intentions throughout the day. Like I set intention before I did this broadcast. I'm going to set intention before I drive home. Like I set the intention for the tone of the day of how I want. Like I say, basically now every single day, I set the intention that, or I ask that I have a day of heaven on earth, including all those that I come into contact with. So hopefully you have a day of heaven on earth today, because we're in contact with each other from this point forward. Okay, so I set those, the main intention for the day, but then throughout the day, I'm also setting intentions. And that was one of the lessons that I got from myself, was I wasn't doing enough. Like I thought I was doing enough. I needed to do more. So now I'm like, if I'm picking up a pen, let me set the intention before I write. Like it's literally like that. So just be open and stop comparing yourself to where you think you are compared to someone else on their journey, because you don't know what their starting point is. And you never know where they are. No, it's not a linear concept. It's literally like layers. You can be here and I can be here, but what layer are we on? Who knows? And why does it matter? Why does it matter? In your present moment, be in your present moment, where you are now. Be grateful. Have a lot of gratitude for where you are now, and stop comparing. When you incorporate everything that I talked about today, that's how you stabilize yourself during trying times. It is literally how you stabilize yourself, is incorporating all that. It's not a one-shot thing where, okay, if I do this, then that. If this, then that. If I want to say that is if you keep an open mind, but then I have to also say keep an open mind and be neutral. There's all these things, but the things I shared with you today, if you incorporate all of them, and it's not just a one-time thing, this is a lifestyle on every single situation. You're going to find that there's going to be some situations that come into your reality that's very, very trying. But if you incorporate what I'm sharing with you, you will get through those. Mimi knows one trying that I just recently went through, and I may share it with you guys when it just depends. But I've had several trying places. I mean, my story that I shared, Karen, that you heard, you didn't actually hear all of it, but again, no one knows every single thing. Okay, so stop comparing yourself. And a lot of times, if I don't share details, it's because I don't want you to start comparing what me versus other. Like I remember Nisi was telling me she was listening to this wake up call where this lady was an attorney. She was doing this, that, and the other. She was raising her kids, and she was saying, but I'm still running a successful business. And to, different people see that as from different perspective. But in my mindset, I was thinking of it like, she was an attorney. She was talking about all these that she did, which was superwoman, right? And yet she's still running a successful business. Her intent may have been to motivate people. I don't know if she set intention. I don't know. I'm saying her intent may be to motivate people. However, I wonder if she really set the intent to motivate people, if it would have come out differently. Because I can imagine some people listening to her broadcast and then feeling less than because they're not an attorney, and all they're doing, they're raising their kids, and they're struggling doing that. And that's a struggle. So now they're like, well, you're doing this, that, and the other, and you're successful, and I'm just trying to raise my kids, and I'm struggling. That's what I'm saying. When you start listening to outside people and you're listening to what they're doing, you're comparing yourself to them. You don't know their circumstances. Matter of fact, that's just what she's sharing with you. But you don't know her trials and tribulations. She's not sharing those. She's only sharing with you the cherry. There's cherries in your moments too. There's cherries when you're raising your kids and they say wonderful things that just bring a smile to your face, and you're just happy in that moment to be there raising your kids. And then all the other times you're all stressed out pulling out your hair because there's so much other stuff to get done, but there still are those cherry moments. She's just sharing with you a cherry moments. We're all superhuman in our rights. Stop comparing your superpowers to other people's, because it's not going to be effective for you. Be solid in your own superior powers, not problems, powers. Know that we are all created equally. We all have the divineness within us. It's how you choose to have it reflected from you based upon your experiences and your circumstances. Overcome those. Stop looking at rearview mirror. Tell yourself a different story. Did you know you can do that? Give yourself permission to let it go. Give yourself permission to change a belief. It doesn't matter that you were raised this way. So what? Is it serving you now? Stop judging. Either it's a match or not a match. Doesn't that sound better than yes or no, right or wrong? It's either a match or not. It either resonates with you or it doesn't. That's becoming neutral. And when you become neutral, now you become balanced in all the areas of your life, including the circumstances, the minute ones. But it's the process. It's the process. But be patient with yourself. And I want to commend you, because by signing up with this 33-day challenge, you have entered into the process. And it's not an easy route. I can tell you that, releasing tools. I talked about EMDR. There's a tapping. There's a book called The Emotions Code. Like when I first read that book, someone shared that book with me. When I first read that book, I wanted to go out and buy it for all of my friends. But I knew not to do that, because I did that one time with another book and it doesn't work the way you think. But that book, Emotions Code, for those of you that want to work on your own emotions and releasing, that was an excellent one by Dr. Nelson Bradley. Have you ever had a massage and then the masseuse gets you at one point, you just start crying, you don't know why? Releasing. Okay, so there's tons of tools out there, literally tons of tools. What I'm sharing with you is go inside first, and that's what's the right one for you at that time. And then also understand, there was my phone. And then also understand that it is a process, and there's layers upon layers, layers upon layers. All right, so that is it for this week. Again, welcome to week 3 for today. I'm happy you guys are here. I'm very happy that you invited me along on your journey. And if you do have specific questions, then reach out to me. I mean, most of you guys are like either on Messenger or on text, whatever. You're reaching out to me individually, which is great. But reach out in the group, because I want you to understand that we're all going through the same thing. I mean, people are talking to me, about private matters privately, which I understand. But we're all in the same group. We all are going through this. We're all going through this life together. It's just that different circumstances. And you know what? There really is a common denominator, a common thread between all of us, all of our circumstances, not just in this group. Okay. So don't feel, this is a judgment zone free place. We're not going to judge you on what your situation is. Matter of fact, I welcome the challenges that you're facing, so that we can all see that we're all going through the same thing. Okay. But if you do want to continue to contact with me privately, that's fine. I'll address those as well. All right. So that's it for this evening. I want to again thank you guys. I'm very grateful that you invited me on your journey, and I wish you blessings and have a good week. Bye-bye now.